There we go.
Yeah,
Yeah, would you like to go over a little bit of your history and why you started writing on Substack?
absolutely. So the name, the Resilient Mental State, I've been known even since my teen years, and I truly don't remember where I got it from. But I've been calling everything a mental state for a long time. And like even before I found Wim Hof, who proved that being cold is actually a mental state, even when you reach hypothermia, can be
Yeah.
reversed with enough training and with deliberate discomfort in those environments, intentional breathing, some cool stuff. But I've been calling pain a mental state. I mean, I was inspired by Rocky, no pain, no pain.
Oh
Since
yeah.
I don't know where it came from. I wish I could remember where I got everything as a mental state for the most part from. But yeah, I've been interested in stress my whole life due to personal experience, just with family, particularly extended family, and a lot of issues growing up. I was curious about why are some people pretty, I didn't know the word at the time, but resilient. Why do some people respond well to adversity, are pretty
Oh
calm
yeah.
chaos versus others who struggle quite a bit with the same stressor? So
Hmm.
I went off to school, thought I wanted to be a psychiatrist, chemistry classes, and observing on the job, which I always recommend people do if you don't know what you do in life. Uh, Go view that job. That was not what I wanted to do. So I
Hmm.
pivoted, kept a psychology undergrad, but picked up speech and hearing science as another major. And was working with kids with a lot of communication disorders, think autism, Asperger's syndrome, spectrum like disorders,
Oh
and
yeah.
fell into audiology and loved that, was very passionate about it, went to grad school, learned about opportunities in the military, and that was 11 and a half years ago. I commissioned and became a naval audiologist, which I've been doing for the past almost 12 years now.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but but in the military, they encourage collateral duties and ways to impact your command, the region, military as a whole. And I fell into a program called Combat Operational Stress Control, and that was a program established many years ago during the height of our conflict in Iraq and Afghanistan, where there were high rates of burnout across the military,
Oh yeah.
uh, across family members, and even just civilians working for the DoD. Understandably so. So every branch of service was tasked with standing up a program. This was the one for the Navy and the Marine Corps. I got trained underneath of it, and all that interest in psychology and stress came back. I was applying as a provider in audiology, but getting some formal training and then starting to apply it as my life as a newlywed and then a father. Things just started falling in line, and I got more and more involved in the program. Took over the program at Naval Hospital
Oh
Guam and
yeah.
did it, and then started writing for a few publications. A friend recommended when I was like, "Where do I store some of these things that I'm writing?" He's like, "You're on Substack. You're following these writers. Boy, post it there." And that was just over a year ago now.
Oh yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. So, what is part of, like, just when you're doing this training at the job, like what types of things are you doing?
Very similar to what I write about. So my first two posts on Substack were Stress Management 101 and intentional stress, or the concept that I love to talk about, which is resilience training. But
Hmm.
I teach stress physiology. I teach essentially stress management first and foremost. And I do think that's a good place to start because as an audiologist in the military, I talk all the time when I give a safety stand down of what is the number one injury in the military every year? I ask my audience. Not a trick question, by the way. And so I eventually get to hearing loss, and we
Yeah.
noise induced hearing loss. And it does affect about 10% of the population across the military,
Yeah.
give or take, based on the job every year. And I ask why, and we get into those details. And I say, why does the military care? And we talk about communication capability, situation awareness. But at a 10% prevalence rate, that's the number one injury. And then I
Yeah.
say, who's impacted by stress? 100%. Everybody's impacted by stress. We just don't have a lot of documented injuries or systems that hone in on performance decrements before you get support, or even if you just persist through a burned out state long enough before you move on to the next place or get out of the military.
Hmm.
So we have documented interventions when you need a medical intervention and for
Yep.
support, which we have phenomenal resources for that. And I know growing up in the 90s, the old school model of mental toughness, suck it up, persist, move on, don't talk
Yep.
about your emotions. Feelings are a weakness.
Yep.
Suppress that and move on. And don't get me wrong, there's a time for that, especially in the military. But emotional intelligence also was starting to become more culturally accepted in the later 90s. There's a lot of great books on it.
Yep.
And that old school method of mental toughness obviously led to a lot of downstream issues with mental functioning and
Yep.
assistance needed later in life. So, real mental toughness, real resilience is recognizing potential issues, having self awareness, knowing when intervention is needed at the individual level, at support levels in your community or in your family, and then, of course, knowing that we have amazing resources when things do get to an all stop point and you need professional intervention. But things are not black and white. Things are not you're either good to go or you're
Yeah.
weak, need help. Most things in this world are in the middle. You're somewhere in the gray area. And first and foremost, self awareness. So I teach that quite a bit. Effective intervention as early as possible, and that's stress management to recover. And then I love getting to my favorite concept, intentionally causing stress so you can train the muscle
Hmm.
that is resilience because it is a trainable skill.
It's funny that nobody would think of intentionally causing stress. And we need to talk about that at some point or another here for sure. But so I was in the artillery back in the day. So I know about the hearing challenges there. Uh, and in my case, I have a little bit of hearing loss in my left ear, which is not just from the artillery. Like we were wearing hearing protection, but that was back in the early 90s. So it was just earplugs and nothing fancy.
Yep.
Then I ran a chainsaw for years. For like 3 years, I ran a chainsaw, uh, and that's all on the left side. And then I did some other jobs, So as a result, uh, I've seen some audiologists
Yeah.
about the ringing in my ear. Um, but the stress connection with the hearing loss, which a lot of people aren't aware of, the ringing gets worse if I'm really stressed. And I don't know all the pathways and reasons for that, but I can tell if I've not handled stress because I can hear it.
Which is
Literally, I can hear it.
a lot of us, I mean, we all have tells. We all have
Yep.
things that we can become aware of. There's kind of a blessing behind your tinnitus. And by the way, we could
Yep.
make a whole conversation about tinnitus. That is one of my
Yeah.
specialty areas. And I love using tinnitus as a way to relate to stress management because and
Mm,
I can talk about the physiology behind tinnitus. Like I said, we can make this whole conversation that it is fascinating where tinnitus comes from, and it is really brain derived due to peripheral damage.
mm.
So it's coming
Okay.
from your brain, and it amplifies like anything else does from stress physiology. So
Mm,
for you to have that tell, and then have a true physical and auditory alarm, if you will, like I'm
yep.
experiencing stress response, you now know you have awareness. So that is first and foremost. You need to know when you're stressed because if you don't have awareness, you can't intervene.
Yep.
So there's a little blessing for your tinnitus, but I can also help you take that down and make it not so bothersome, whether we talk about that tonight or not.
Let's schedule that one for a different one because now I'm really curious. Um, Okay, so resiliency. The reason I'm more interested in resilience is because everybody's going to have hard things, right? Things are going to happen, and I watch my parents as they get older. They're both in their late 80s, early 90, uh, and they're not very resilient whatsoever. And I'm just making. I want to make sure that I'm as that I can take a fall, for instance, and that every little thing that isn't as hard on me as I get older. So that's why I'm interested in resiliency is because I can see it's not just for when you get older either. Like all kinds of things can happen. You could you could get into a car accident or whatever thing could happen, and if you aren't able to handle that sudden stress, where are you at? Um so yeah, I'm like over a person's life, the value of getting resilient seems really high to me. What are your thoughts on our best bets for the average person?
I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. You're indicating a lot of physical resilience
Yeah,
considerations. And obviously, resilience in one realm doesn't necessarily translate to another. We think of some of the most exceptional athletes of all time who are, of course, physically resilient, and yet their life was a mess. Maybe
that's a
they
good point.
emotionally didn't have control of their mind, or I mean, you could even say there's financial resilience if you don't have things squared away
Yep.
for preparation of the future. There's definitely social resilience. there's spiritual resilience. There's different types of stressors can cause or necessitate a different type of response.
Yep.
Um, I like to first and foremost just define resilience generally as the ability to effectively manage and then eventually recover from stress. So, stress is inevitable.
Yep.
We talked about how important self-awareness is. Again, you can't intervene on anything unless you're aware of it. So that's, I often say that's one of the most important skills, if not the most important, to train, whether it is self-awareness and of course situation awareness too. So you can recognize external threats or stressors for what they
Yep.
are. Then asking yourself, what is the stressor or what is the event, whether it's internal or external? And then what is my perception of it or what is my stress? And then you start looking into controllables and uncontrollables with each, and then starting to talk about um, coping strategies for the uncontrollables or just simple
Yep.
decisions, accepting it for what it is, or if you don't accept it, being miserable for what it is, because we often can't control stressors. We can communicate some things, we can make plans, we can ask for help.
Yep.
More often than not, we can't control much of the stressors in our life, but we can definitely control our response. We can control our perspective of it, and that is also trainable. So,
Hmm.
getting back to your original question, resilience throughout the lifespan, it starts with reflection on yourself. What are your strengths? What are your vulnerabilities? Where are your areas of opportunity when you think about the highest risk in your life, whether that is support systems that you have or do not have?
Yep.
Of course, the physical part, which is my favorite thing to talk. I love fitness. I love using that as a vehicle to train resilience because you really do get to train the body, the mind, and the spirit. And if you do it
Yep.
in a social situation, you're also training that as well. The brain cannot differentiate. Our limbic system, our emotional brain, does not differentiate stressors. So it
Yep.
is activated and it does its thing as soon as it's activated. Our perspective of stressors will dictate how extreme the response is. And of course, our management strategies will dictate how long it lasts. But other than intensity and duration, the stress response is the same every time. So if we are aware that we are stressed, we can intervene. And why I like to teach stress management first, we need to be able to recover from the inevitable stressors and stress in our life in order to train resilience. So we need to recognize what is required to get back to a performance level that is adequate for us to maintain whatever is important in our life. So I love stress management strategies, starting off with that, because then they translate well to intentional stress training. If you have stress management strategies for the uncontrollable stress in your life, now
Yep.
when I control an environment and make myself stressed, I can practice using those strategies too to make them part of my muscle memory, if you will, make them a subconscious response rather than an emotional reaction, which is how a lot of us operate. Something happens and we have our innate patterns that we operate by, some of which
Yep.
are not that resilient. I had many growing up. Um,
Yep.
Suck it up, don't think about it, suppress it. I used to think stress was linear. As I feel it building up, I thought I had this fuse, and if it got to a point, I'm exploding. It's not the case. And you can learn a lot of this when you intentionally cause discomfort at a manageable level for a certain amount of time with prepared strategies like conscious breathing or reframing of the situation or knowing that your mind controls your body. Your body does not control your
Yep.
mind. You are not a victim to your urges. Pain, hunger, cold, hot, all of these sensory indicators that we have are just our body giving us indicators of what's happening, but our mind decides how to respond to that. And a lot of people, particularly in our modern age, and how amazing it is, we're quite comfortable, and being comfortable is okay. But if you can't be uncomfortable, you're not even be comfortable being
Yeah.
comfortable. Our body is designed to find threats, and if there's not external threats, our body will create them inside, and you'll be miserable anyway. So it's funny how fulfillment is often tied to resilience. It's tied to the ability to endure and take on hardships with a healthy mindset. Um,
Hmm.
but but life is going to punch us in the mouth. Life is going to cause setbacks. We are going to have
Yeah.
to recover from hard times. And therefore, if we are not prepared for it, when you have that fall and your body is not physically resilient, or you have that job that's lost and you're not able to pivot and think about opportunities, life's going to be pretty tough. So when you can prepare for it physically, mentally, socially, and spiritually, you're ready to take on any challenge, and you also feel more fulfilled. Uh,
Yep.
the topic of self care these days, it's not it can have like any other word, positive and negative connotations, and I like to differentiate like self care from self pampering. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong
Yeah.
with
There's a,
stuff. Go get your manicure and pedicure, or whatever else people like to do to take care of yourself, and feel good about it. But true self care is finding those ways to challenge yourself and overcome it, to where it's not pleasure per se, but it is fulfillment. It's overcoming a challenge that you create to cause gradual improvements in
yeah.
your life in a particular area. And again, coming back to exercise or fitness. I love using that analogy because there's some principles in fitness that translate really well across domains. One's called the SAID principle. So SAID, SAID, specific adaptations to impose demands.
Yeah.
It is basically saying if you want to get stronger, don't go outside for a long run. Lift some heavy weights.
Yeah. Lift some stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, specifically do exactly what for the adaptations you want to cause.
Yeah.
So if you want to get more courageous, cause yourself to be afraid. You can't just decide to be more courageous. You need to train your response to fear. If you want to get more resilient, cause some stress. And it's not going to happen just because you decide. Life is too complex. Circumstances are too dynamic. We're never going to get to perfection, but the SAID principle does a really good job of showing plasticity or adaptations in our body is
Yeah.
possible throughout the lifespan. And that's really empowering too, because you're talking about at an advanced age. We have kind of a cultural perception that at a certain point, injuries just last longer, and your body's just not able to do as much, and all these other um, kind of negative thinking patterns about the impacts of age. And don't get me wrong, time's undefeated. We do start slowing down. There are things that happen as the body ages through wear and tear and just degenerative processes in our body. But we know strength training can be done throughout the lifespan and has all kinds of benefits for your body, let alone mind. A strong body influences a strong mind, just like a strong mind
Yep.
influences a strong body. But these are all trainable and beneficial throughout the lifespan. And there's a lot of great evidence now that disprove the critical window theory, where we think you can only learn a language or do certain
Oh
things
yeah.
younger critical windows. No, the environments are optimized, and failure is encouraged for children learning new skills. Failure is not really encouraged for adults. We're not really
Yeah.
comfortable with failing in a beginner's mindset. But you put yourself in the arena. You put yourself in whatever domain you want to get better. You want to learn a new language? Go live in that environment and force yourself
Yep.
to. Don't just read something 10 minutes a day and think you're going to get it. No, the more you intentionally do something, the better you're going to get at it. And that's
Yeah.
true everywhere. And I truly believe that, as you can tell, as I keep rambling on about resilience. Yeah.
You know, with the thing about children being able to learn better, I always think, yeah, but that kid, his or her only job is to learn that language. That's their only job. They've got nothing else going on. They have to learn that or they can't communicate. They don't have all the other things that we've got on top of that. So they've got a lot of incentive to learn how
Their,
to speak English or whatever language. So it's
their mind
entirely different than when you're
to it.
35 and you think, okay, well, I want to learn French as well as what I also do, and I'm going to spend 5 minutes a day on this app. It's nothing the same. So you can't really say, yeah, it's apples and oranges.
Yeah.
For
Their mind oriented to it. Their environment's optimized for it.
yeah,
Everyone around them is encouraging it. It's just
yeah,
ideal. And don't get me wrong, 5 minutes a day, as you know, with my daily challenges, that can do a lot over
yeah,
time based on the skill that you're trying to build. But if you're trying to be efficient and you're trying to do something like a language, it does require a deeper dive. So
yeah,
different tiers for all things based on how quickly you want to
yeah.
get to competence.
Oh, let's go over your challenge that we're working on right now, uh, which is, I guess it's 50 of the reverse burpees and
Yes,
50 technical get-ups, correct? And
correct.
so what are we on? We've done day 4, 5. We're done
Today,
day 5.
today's the fifth.
And yeah, yeah, I'm having a little bit of a struggle with getting to my feet on the reverse burpee. Everybody watching won't have any idea exact. Maybe you could describe these exercises that we're working on.
Absolutely. So yeah, I do, and I've done actually for the past year, but on Substack only for the past, I think, 4 or 5 months. But I have a outdoor fitness group in the community that I started up last spring, and we meet once a week to do a workout, typically outdoors, and aimed at a particular adaptation or skill set. But on top of it, we've grown now to about 70 members. We get
Oh
a
yeah.
handful of people show up for the workouts, but we get a lot more participation in a daily fitness challenge that I do every month. And this all comes from I was stationed in Guam before my current duty station in Southern Maryland. And that's where I actually got into mixed martial arts and jujitsu and really started transitioning from exercising. I've always been in athletics. I've always been kind of an athlete and pretty good, but I've never really trained. I've always exercised, meaning that I've worked out, but not with an intention, not with
Hmm.
with a conscious, deliberate, systemized methodology to build a skill set in whatever way is either I love functional fitness. I love working out to live, to be a better father, to be a better jujitsu competitor. But it all comes back to fatherhood and being able to play with my kids and their kids for as long as possible in whatever way they might want to, which leads to a lot of fun workouts that I'm using my kids and throwing them up as high as I can and doing other fun things there. Maybe I'll do a post one day with kid related workouts. Back to your question. Um, so with the daily challenge in Guam, there was a 50 burpees a day for 50 days challenge. Before that challenge, burpees were not something that I would do um, intentionally as part of any workout that I would create. It was an if it
Like
was an
most of us.
Yeah, correct. If it was an obligation because of the workout that I went to, I'd do them. But we had this challenge. I took it on, and I'm pretty competitive, particularly when I get challenged. And the head of the gym, who became one of my best friends, he's a professional fighter since he was 18, CrossFit athlete. He beats me in almost everything all the time. But we started getting pretty competitive at this, and by the end, I could do 50 burpees faster than he could. So, pretty cool win for me when I didn't get many. And eventually, I left Guam, and he hits me up during COVID, during the pandemic, about the Guinness World Record for burpees in 1 hour. And and he said, "You won't do it." And I had nothing else to do. I couldn't train in jujitsu like I wanted to. It was chaotic. I was still trying to get into my command fully integrated, but we weren't on base. So I was trying to learn my job from home.
Yep.
And in the mornings, that was when I was training. But I didn't really have, I was just doing different fitness programs, just trying to stay in shape for whenever I could start getting back to MMA and jiu-jitsu. But I took on this challenge and I started training to see how many burpees I could do in an hour. During that time, I learned that there was also a 3-minute record, and that looked very achievable. So I specifically trained for that. But it all started from this 50 burpees a day for 50 days. And I eventually got the Guinness World Record for most burpees in three
Mm.
minutes
Really?
back in 2021. It has since been beaten. And then I had all the shoulder stuff happen. I think I could get it again, but I don't know if I'll try for it because it took some time to get there. Um, and I love the other things that I do too much to try for a silly record. But it was a cool way to use the setback that was the pandemic to focus on something else and
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
get something out of it. But that daily challenge impacted me, and it showed me that yeah, that was 50 days, but you can dramatically change yourself. And to do 50 burpees, I could do that in less than 2 minutes by the end of that 50-day challenge. So I thought, like, man, a couple minutes a day can really change whatever
Yep.
you're trying to work on. So for the past year, it's been different types of physical challenges, nothing more than 10 minutes, usually less than five, aimed at a specific skill set. So this month, now actually getting back to your question, are reverse burpees or technical get ups. I'm an audiologist once again. So not only do I deal with hearing, but I deal with balance.
Yep.
Told you tinnitus was one of my specialty areas. Vestibular audiology or balance related audiology is my other specialty area. I love balance, even though I don't do it much for my job these days. I'm actually working on a balance masterclass for Substack right now. It's getting much bigger than I thought it would, but it's coming at some point. Excited for that because the balance system's so complicated. We have our vision, we have our inner ears, which are very important for maintaining our orientation, both of our head and our vision as we move with ingrained reflexes and sensors and membranes inside of it, and then proprioception, or our sense of touch and sensory feedback of where we are stationary or dynamically. So, particularly with proprioception, a lot of muscles and joints are involved in maintaining our balance on top of our brain being the quarterback of all of those sensory systems coming at once. So a lot of trainable opportunities within that. But we love to talk about, if you were to fall, how do you get back up? And that's a really big question.
Yep.
Or fall prevention, which is imperative for advanced stage. Falls will change your life. If your
Yep.
body is not physically resilient and you break a hip or you break a knee, sometimes that's all she wrote. And it can be very difficult to recover from that at an advanced age when you have other comorbidities present. So you do want to focus on fall prevention. But life's going to punch us in the face. We are going to fall
Yep.
sometimes. So how we fall is just as much of a skill as how we get back up. I love, it's not the quote which I put in the post. It's not how many times you fall, it's how many times you get back up. Well, if you fall the wrong way, you're not getting back
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
The skill of
That's for
falling,
any of us.
absolutely.
It,
I fall right now with the wrong fall, hit my head, and I'm done.
yep.
Or even I've seen it so many times in the gym or in actual sanctioned fights. Somebody gets taken down and they post out with their arm on the ground,
Yep.
and then their bones compound fracture comes right through.
Yep.
I mean, it's a lot of our natural instincts, our reactions, once again, emotional
Yep.
reactions. Oh my gosh, this is happening. Put your arms out. And now one problem got a lot worse. So there is a skill to falling. And that was the intent behind this challenge. So properly falling, which is what I talk about first in the reverse burpees.
Yep.
And then unmodified reverse burpee, you do a powerful sit up, take your weight distribution between your legs, and you basically get into a deep squat and then hop back up. But if you have limited hip mobility, knee mobility, or ankle mobility, or other things to work on, that is a challenging movement. So I offer a lot of modifications. And in many ways, I love the technical get up when it comes to function in everyday life more than I love the reverse burpee. The
Oh
reverse
yeah.
burpee is a challenging exercise. The technical get up is a functional skill to fall, particularly if it's a self-defense situation, or just to have really good stability as you get up. So I give videos, and the challenge is one, with the modifications, accessible to all. It's brief, but if done consistently over a month, I love getting the feedback from people who complete these challenges and the changes that they make. When you think about how much time you can hold a wall sit from day one to the end of the month, like we did last month, I doubled my best time.
Mm.
And this is during shoulder recovery. So I intentionally, because I do a lot of this, so I can do it myself too. I couldn't do much with my shoulder. So wall sits, easy to do when your shoulder is recovering from surgery. And then
Yep.
I double my best time for the skill that is maintaining that static hold.
Oh, that's pretty cool. The
Yeah.
like so I've been doing your challenge, but then I'm also adding in some Turkish get-ups because I'm a kettlebell guy, so I'm working on the on the Pavel, I can't remember his last name now. But
Tussolini, I
it's
think
this
that's it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the Strong First. I've taken that course, I read the book, I wrote about it on Substack already, and I'm just getting back into that again. So I've actually taken because I have to do 5 per side of the Turkish get up with, and I'm only at a 20-pound kettlebell for that right now, but I've added that into your challenge. I've replaced some of your technicals with that. So
Turkish
yeah.
with a
Yeah.
resistance, as you know, with my intentional stress challenges, separate from my daily challenge for each month. But I like to post
Yeah.
as often as possible intentional stress challenges in different domains. I do a lot of physical ones. If I were to make this monthly challenge an intentional stress challenge, Turkish get ups would be the elite part of that challenge.
Yeah.
So you adding that in, props to you. That's really cool. And Pavel, you talk about resilience. Um, he is really the name known for proper recovery and the benefit of showing up every day to be able to get after it rather than intensity and then being burnout and two sort of
Yep.
work 2 days. He really created the system that a lot of people lean back on and refer to for the benefits behind even strong men who want to be able to lift as much as possible. It's not about lifting to failure. And I love saying consistency is way more important than
Yep.
it. I love going hard, but I can't go 100% every day. When I'm fighting or doing training rounds, I'm not
Yep.
going every round. I'm not even when I'm going live in tournaments. I'm rarely going 100% because you can't maintain that. You want to find something that you can maintain for as long as possible, and then when it's time for recovery, ensure that you recover so you're ready to come back either for the next match or for the next day or for the next tough conversation at
Yep.
work, the next anything. If we're not recovering, we're burning out. I love to say the difference between resilience and Burnout is recovery. If you do not recover, even the most mild stressors in your life will eventually build up and be a burden that is a performance decrement to your life. And that will just snowball everything else out of control. We need to assess our situation. We need to be able to recover. And that's me again going on a tangent, unrelated kind of what you're saying before with Turkish get ups. But Pavel is great for the concept of recovery.
Mhm. So I joined my wife for a while during the shutdowns during COVID. They were doing these hit workouts, and I was running, and I thought, well, this will be a good addition to the running. So I started doing these workouts with them, and within 1 month, they beat me up so bad that I couldn't even breathe hardly anymore, and I quit. I had to give up on it because I could not recover from those workouts. Doing a lot of box jumps and lunges and Spider-Mans and all these different things, and I would be so sore that I didn't even want to live anymore. Uh, I know everybody's a little different, but I couldn't see the value in what they were doing, so I let that go and I went back to my running and I was a lot happier because I'm just a fun runner. Like I don't do races or anything. I just say, okay, well I'm gonna run for an hour, 3 days, 4 days a week, or I'm gonna do right now I'm just doing 10 minutes in the mornings and that's it. Just 10 minutes of however far I get.
Yeah.
And because it's winter. But yeah, so
You're Canadian. You should love the winter.
yeah,
Get out there and be out there for
yeah.
2 hours.
Well, I know you're gonna say that that's gonna make me more resilient. And at one point I was considering moving to a warmer place, but now thinking about it, long term, maybe I won't bother. So
Yeah. I've been to those gyms, and it's really influenced how I coach and how I write and set up classes in person because I have loved most when I have done quote unquote high intensity interval training. And in my class, I have a 75-year-old and an 8-year old,
yeah,
and a lot of other ages, but making fitness accessible to all, regardless of the style of the workout, whether it's high intensity, whether it's more endurance based, whatever it is. I'm a true believer in making sure you offer any and all modifications to make it accessible, and then also talking about perceived exertion. If you create a culture where it feels competitive and it feels anxious and like you need to go as hard as possible, my 70% is going to be much different than your 70%
oh yeah,
based on how proficient we are at a given workout. Eventually, your 70% might be much better than mine with Turkish get ups if you keep at it with what you're doing. We all optimize because of said principles and plasticity to what we do most often. So we all have our
yep,
strengths, we all have our limitations. But if you can talk about particularly subjective factors to determine your perceived exertion. I'm biased, but uh, fitness is beneficial for everybody. It's the only person you should be competing with is yourself, and even then, be kind with yourself. Try to do better than you were yesterday, but if you have a hard day, that's okay. Still showing up when you don't feel like it.
yep,
Consistency beat intensity. You can only manage it for so long. And I like the pivot that you're doing because we know daily activity is way more important than intermittent exercise or even training. I could
yep.
have the best high intensity interval training program to give you in the world. And if you do that 1 hour a day, and then that's all you do for physical activity, and you sit on the couch the rest of the day, you're not going to be in that great of shape, and it's not going to have that much benefit. If you focused more on 12,000 steps per day and live in a pretty active lifestyle,
Yep.
that consistency over time is going to have more of a positive impact on your health than that 1 hour a day here and there. So it just all ties back to what you do more often, your body will optimize for. And if 23 hours of the day you're pretty lethargic, your body's going to lean into that more than that 1 hour of going kind of hard.
That really, I think that a lot of people are under the impression that they just have to hit the gym, 3 times a week, and
Check it
then they
off.
can
Yep.
just lay back and watch Netflix or whatever all
Yep.
evening, every evening.
I knocked
And
that out. I'm good to go.
yeah, yeah. And then if you actually looked at their step counter and they were at like maybe 3,200 steps that day, they barely moved. Like, and 3,200, that might even be higher than some people are getting, I think. Uh, I,
Yeah.
I don't know, but whereas I'm really trying to split mine up, like do a little bit. I'm trying to take breaks, because I do a lot of desk work, so I'm trying to get up and walk around and get the steps in, some in the morning, some in take long walks in between meetings, whatever a guy's got to do. Um,
Do you
so y-
you also are following Michael Easter's account, right? Do you follow Michael Easter, 2%?
Yes, yes, I do. Yeah.
Did you read his post about his wife and their step count competition a while back?
I don't think I did. I didn't read that one.
I can't remember if I brought this up to you or not, but so her organization, he posted this several months ago, but her organization had a challenge for who could, I can't remember if it was total steps in the month. I think it was average per day. Who could get the highest average per day?
Oh
And
yeah.
I don't like the term life hack. I don't believe there are many hacks in life. This is pretty darn close. If you're going to call something a life hack, this is a life hack, particularly if you have a desk job. She got one of those desk treadmills
Yeah.
and she had it on a very low setting, but she was by the desk 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day. She averaged he had great posts about daily step count and how low it's gotten. And I think it's like
Yep.
the Hazda tribes that are still like one of the best examples of primitive cultures that are still alive in remote areas of the world. They average 15 to 18,000 steps a day, whereas we average like 3 to 6. So they're three
Yeah.
times. She averaged 32,000 steps a day for that month, and then it's continued
Really.
like the past year, which is pretty wild and pretty awesome. But yeah, the impact that just what's called NEAT or non-exercise
Yeah.
activity neurogenesis can have on you. Um, that's first. I mean, we talk about tiers once again. Like if it were an intentional stress challenge where I wanted to just help you become more functionally fit and metabolically healthy, I would start with zone one daily activity.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna talk to you about HIIT at all. And then we can start talking about the zone two stuff where you get your heart rate up a little bit and you start
Yeah.
doing 10-minute runs that you're doing and try to progressively overload that. And the other exercise principle I didn't talk about before that I love, said principle, but when we do something like intentional stress, which let's be honest, training is that we are intentionally
Yeah.
causing the stress response in our body in an intentional way for a given amount of time to whatever intensity we want and then recovering from it. So once we get comfortable, if you're just running for 10 minutes a day for the rest of your life and you're comfortable doing that, you're going to plateau at some point. You're going to
Yeah.
not receive much benefit. So the other exercise principle is progressive overload. Once you start
Yeah.
getting comfortable doing what initially made you uncomfortable, let's push the envelope. Let's get a little uncomfortable again so we can continue to cause plasticity and continue to cause improvement
Hmm.
in whatever way that you are specifically trying to. So that's when we can start talking about upping the intensity and thinking about other ways to benefit the goals that you had. But most of the time, when I talk to people about how to improve their fitness, walk more, just move
Yeah.
more, and then do long duration endurance stuff, whether it is just walking or eventually maybe swimming, maybe biking.
Yeah.
I love the assault bike. If you can't get out of the house because you're in Canada and it's that cold and you got 20 feet of snow outside, I love the assault bike or something stationary. I like the assault bike because of you involve the arms and the legs and you got the resistance
Oh
basically.
yeah.
But there's so many things that you can do and
Yeah.
you can get creative.
It's ridiculous. In some ways, I'm here in this apartment, and I'll throw on my weighted vest, and I'll grab one of my kettlebells, and I'll just walk around the kitchen island and the through the living room and back and forth. And I'll do that to top up my steps at the end of the day. That's what I'm doing right now because my goal is to get a minimum of 8,000 a day and maybe 12 or whatever. So, and I'm using an app to keep track of it where you're kind of social competition. So I'm trying to make points. So, but I'll throw the weighted vest on just because I have it here. It's a 20-pound vest. It's not, and a 20-pound kettlebell, and then just switch the kettlebell back and forth because it actually makes it more interesting
I
rather than just
everything about that is so cool. And 20-pound vest, that's awesome. And the fact that you're using technology to gamify
yeah,
and the motivation behind it, there's the benefit. I'm not a big user of biometric feedback, but I love the idea of gamifying and
yeah,
making fun and a challenge and making it social where you're involved with other people. That is so cool. And wearing weight and moving, I mean, you're adding resistance to your neat activity.
yeah.
I love that the acronym's neat because like you can like use the actual words up.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat that you're doing that.
Well, and then if a buddy calls or if I'm talking because right now I work away from home, so for 4 days of the week I'm not at home. So got to call the wife, and I won't even let her know that I'm walking around doing that. I'll just talking to her on the phone and walking, and I don't really. It, it's not. It feels kind of weird to tell people, oh yeah, I didn't watch TV. I just walked around in circles all night for.
There's
But
a
you know,
There's a professional fighter, a female named Rose Namajunas, who fights in the UFC. And she's a small, I forget her weight class, but very light fighter. She has been known in the past to wear a 40-pound weight vest just to live in as part of her
Oh
character.
yeah,
Just has it and she just lives in it. But you just think about throwing all that extra weight on your body and whatever percentage you want to, and how your body's going to adapt to that. You're not going to be slouched over in that kind of vest. That's going to
nope,
torch your lower back. You're going to have better posture. You're going to be able to maintain weight. When you take
yep,
that off, you are going to feel electric and powerful. So inspired by her, I've done that many times too. When you know you're not going to have many opportunities to get after it, throwing on
yep,
your vest at home and walking around, how cool. Absolutely. And even without the intentional walking, just having it on throughout the day, you're adding resistance passively rather than, again, the random intentional exercise for 30 minutes and thinking you've earned the day.
yep,
Don't get me wrong, that's great when you can do that, but we all know
yep.
our days don't go according to plan. So working it in creatively like that, beautiful.
So like we have a lot of a mental, emotional stress, even spiritual, you could say stress going on in general in life right now, and people maybe could use some toughening in that area, some more resilience in that area. So what can they do if they don't feel that they're up to snuff for that kind of for mental? I know, yeah, one thing you can do for mental and spiritual maybe would be meditation. That can be considered a stressor, but what do you advise people on that kind of stuff?
So I love the quote by Bruce Lee, and I bring it up all the time because I write tons of challenges and I give all kinds, and just like the online, there are endless resources and you get lost in the sauce real quick.
Yeah,
Um, so absorb what is useful, discard what is not, make what is uniquely your own. So definitely, if I were to say what is the one intentional stress challenge I would give anyone, I mentioned it already. It's self reflection, and it's not
yeah,
easy to be honest with yourself about what you are currently good at, what you're not currently good at, what are your biggest fears, where are your biggest opportunities, and then most importantly, one of my favorite exercises that I do with clients or in general, that ever since I did it when I first got trained in the program I mentioned now 10 years ago, it's just called a core values exercise. It's 100 different attributes. They all look amazing. And then you get asked, pick the top six that apply to you right now. And that's going to change, by the way, all the time. So you need regular self reflection. But picking six out of that 100, not an easy task. Pretty stressful and difficult in and of itself when you think of what is most representative of me. Then you get asked to rank order them. What is your number one value in your life down to six? And then what I add in when I talk to people is now ask yourself, how are your actions currently aligning with those
okay,
values? I think one of our biggest sources of stress, don't get me wrong, stressors and things happening around us all the time, that is a challenge. And we need to be able to assess those and attack them accordingly, or be able to step aside, detach, recover, and then come back when we're ready. But I think we cause ourselves a lot of angst internally from not aligning and or even understanding what our values are and then living according to them.
yep,
Because if you are truly comfortable and living your authentic life to the best that you can, you're probably going to sleep better in life. You're probably going to be proud of whatever you're doing in the circumstance that you have and the cards that you were dealt. So self reflection reveals all the opportunities for the other intentional stress challenges that you can take on, whether it's physically, mentally, socially, and spiritually. And I like to talk about the spirit is really just like the harmony between your mind and body, which is why I love physical challenges, because you're going to challenge your mind and your soul when you push yourself,
yep,
particularly as you adapt and get into some of these elite levels. But you can get there pretty quick when you talk about getting to your 90 to 100% perceived exertion for holding a plank as long as possible until your body breaks. And then I tell
hmm,
you, next time up, beat that by 5 seconds. I promise you that if you decide to do that on a day where you're well recovered, you will do that because your mind will override your body's tell of,
yep,
I'm really fatigued, this hurts, you need a drop. And your body says, nope, I'm going to focus on my number one that I like to recommend stress management strategy, which is conscious breathing. So
hmm,
that's the other thing that I like to talk about with mental resilience. But you can't be resilient if you cannot effectively manage your current stress level. So assess your stress, be aware of it, and then immediately implement conscious breathing. Because when the stress response is activated, without question, we have physiologic changes that we evolved to have. Our peripheral vision changes, our heart rate changes, our breathing changes, blood rushes out of our stomach, which is why sometimes people can feel like cramping or those butterflies. We all have different symptoms. Some of us, our tinnitus goes up. You name the person, that we have different tells that we can become aware of. But knowing you're in the stress response, taking over an autonomic function that is breathing, and
Yep.
whether that's just being conscious of your breathing and slowing it down. I really like to emphasize the exhales. If you are hyperventilated, you're upping your stress response or your sympathetic nervous system. If you are focused on exhales, you are slowing things down. You're activating your parasympathetic nervous system to get back to baseline. So you can, in real time, reverse the effects, not completely reverse, but slow down the effects of the stress response. And the whole goal is to take yourself from emotional reaction to rational responses.
Yep.
And just becoming conscious of your breathing encourages your prefrontal cortex or your rational brain to get involved and not let your limbic system, our core brain that we evolved from,
Yep.
be the driver. So conscious breathing, there are a lot of strategies. You'll hear about box breathing. One of my favorite is the physiologic size. Full, I like nasal inhale because you can do this when someone's ripping you at work, or
Yep.
venting at you or stressing you out, you name it, a tough conversation at home. Full inhale through the nose, and then when you get to perceived capacity, a more intense second inhale to get a little beyond it, and then a slow, often what I like to do, nasal exhale, even longer than the first two. Again,
Yep.
focusing on exhale. A lot of good research behind that, but you're just disrupting the regular pattern of in, out, in, out. Nope. Prolong in, second in, extend it out. We're just consciously taking over what's trying to happen subconsciously that we evolved from. So, conscious breathing for stress management, self reflection for intentional stress, and then when you reveal your opportunities from that in any realm, as you know, I love to write about that. There are endless opportunities to sharpen the sword that are your strengths or improve upon the opportunities that are your weaknesses. And I also love talking about, I never remember his name, but a guy in the 70s created the stages of skill development. And we all start from subconscious incompetence. We don't even know we stink. We're not aware
Yep.
of anything. So self-reflection and awareness, we become aware of opportunities with that intentional stress. Now we are consciously incompetent. We know that's an opportunity. So then we can start working on it. We can start practicing with the SAID principle and progressive overload principle. And pretty soon we'll get to conscious competence. When we think about it, we're pretty good at it. And now, as we do it most of the time for years, or with
Yep.
practice maybe more efficiently, because you can get pretty good in a short period of time if you spend the time, like we talked about language development, getting to subconscious competence, muscle memory, what we call mastery. There is no perfection, but that is the skill development. And I love that because I believe we're a culmination of our skills. Really, anything we do is from experience, from intention, and yes, genetics play a role for susceptibility and optimization of a certain skill based on our attributes and everything else. But really, we're a combination of our skills and they're all prone to adaptation. And that is an empowering thought. We can change our physiology, our bodies, and our minds with intention, with focus, and with consistency. And again, I tie it all back to my favorite skill that can apply across domains, resilience. And if you understand those concepts, what can make one resilient in the physical realm can also conceptually be applied to your social realm and your relationships, to your mental realm and how you respond to stressors, and of course your spiritual realm when you get to the point of chaos in your life and you can remain calm. It takes time. You'll never get there perfectly, but boy, can you train it and optimize it. I've experienced it, I've taught it, and of course I read about it and learn about it all the time.
Yep.
There's a lot of great evidence for it.
That's pretty cool. One thing that a lot of people don't want to be true is that it's a moving target. So, for instance, with the breathing, at one point I was obsessed with deep breathing, and I trained like because of uh, Reiki training, right? For instance,
Sure.
I spent almost a year straight practicing deep breathing every morning to the point where deep breathing just happens now. But then when I'm in these meetings and such, I used to use conscious deep breathing to counteract an emotional problem. The problem is now the deep breathing is automatic, so now I have to go to a different thing because the target is moved, if that
Yeah,
makes any sense.
it does make sense.
Um,
And like I teach resilience, I write about resilience. I struggle every day, and I make the same mistakes that I make. I'm a parent of four. Particularly, my youngest 3-year-old son is a wild man, and he's just like me. He acts like me. He looks like me. He drives me nuts, and for him, it is the best form of delayed gratification I've ever experienced. But I have to lean back on these strategies, but I mess up. So life is complex. Lack of sleep, poor
Oh
nutrition,
yeah.
setbacks that happen, our daily functioning for whatever reason is going to dictate whether we are in an emotional mental state versus a rational response, resilient mental state. I love mindsets, but no matter how much you prepare, you're going to reach some emotional mental states without question. The
Yep.
best way to optimize is to become aware of them, have strategies in place to know that deep breathing right now is not effective for you. So, how can you pivot to something else? It all starts with awareness. So that is a skill in and of itself. Becoming aware that this is not working well for me. What else can I consider to get myself back to rationality, to effectively manage the uncontrollable that is the current stressor, and then eventually recover from it? Resilience is not just performing optimally all the time. That's just not how it works. I love talking about flow states. They're really cool. They're very possible. I experience it all the time in jujitsu. But it's not true with all my roles. Some people will put me into much worse states because of how good and elite they are, or you name it. There's times in my life where, as much as I'd like to be in a flow state, it's not possible. I need to be able to have grit. I need to be able to grind, to deal with pain, to deal with chaos in my head. And there's something else called
Yep.
clutch states where if you're sick, you're injured, but the ability to still continue on with mental toughness, with a healthy mindset, asking for help. By the way, part of resilience. Seeking support without question, but understanding your limitations and not leaning on one thing or another. We need to have multiple tools in our belt, but focusing on one at a time, trying to build that, getting to a point of competency with deep breathing, and then, okay, what else can I add when this is coming up short? So I like
Yep.
starting there, but it's not an end all be all. It's a way to help encourage some amount of rationality to consider pivoting for intervening on negative thinking patterns, reframing, you name it.
Yeah, it almost seems like you need basically some way to pattern interrupt so that once you've made it into a pattern, it no longer interrupts. That's how it feels like for me, the breathing.
I like
I'm interested in your second, you said you take a second breath in once you've taken most of your air in and then you take another one. That's a pattern interrupt, right? That's
so
not.
I learned about this from Andrew Huberman. So the Huberman Lab podcast, really
Yeah.
great for all things human performance and a lot of evidence behind it. So that was the first time I heard about it. He actually was a contributor to a study looking at different breathing patterns because I learned about box breathing from
Yeah.
a book called On Combat by Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman. Fantastic book about like the evolution of our training methodology in the military to optimize lethality and survivability based on how we used to train to how people train now, but basically using the said principle, making things much more realistic and much more uh, to create better expectations of what real combat is like. You don't want
Yeah.
weird paper targets if you want people to prepare for what combat. You want to actually create the most realistic environments to prepare you accordingly. You actually want to make them worse than what they most likely will. And you can't always do that, but you want to make training as chaotic as possible. So when you get into the arena, it actually sometimes feels easier because you are so prepared, and that's true of professional athletes and you name it. The more chaotic your training, the easier life will be. So yeah, experiencing that just helps for preparation, whatever may come next.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, so on your day to day, what kind of people are you most? Is it all you have your group that you meet with in your neighborhood, you say, and you have your challenges there, but you also have soldiers that you're talking to. Do you have other clients on the go?
So I'm currently at a duty station where I'm doing all things research, development, test, and evaluation from an ideologic perspective for like communication gear
Yeah.
uh, and other considerations. I manage a multidisciplinary military medical team that assesses human performance capabilities to advance our military's effectiveness, particularly in naval aviation. So that's the base that I'm at and what I do in the job. But another part of my job is doing these trainings for multiple commands, not only in the region but virtually online throughout the military based on some of the traction I'm gaining and awareness of some things that I'm doing. So that's becoming part of my job, and I love it because again, everyone's impacted by stress, and the more that you can be resilient, the more that you can effectively respond to your respective mission professionally, and even more importantly, in many ways, life. Um, and so that absolutely is something I'm passionate about. When I talk about clients, I do have some through Substack, but I've worked with over 1,000 people just due to being a provider as an audiologist, because tinnitus management counseling is very much this. It's recognizing what ringing in the ears is. It is what has happened. It is a permanent consequence of damage you experience from hazardous noise to your ear. But there are a lot of controllables to change your brain and its perception of it. So again, we could do a whole hour of me talking about that, and there's some cool strategies that translate so well to resilience training. But giving power back to the person and giving plans of attack to cause plasticity and optimize response to whatever the stressors are in your life is something I'm passionate about. And I've had other jobs in the military where I work with people one-on-one. I've had a lot of leadership jobs, so a lot of counseling and mentorship there. And then now actually working on a few things on Substack. It's cool to see how things continue to evolve. And um, again, just translating concepts across domains. I'm such a big
Mhm.
fan. And it can help us really transform how we respond in one area to another. Again, never perfect, but if you know the way in one area and think about it conceptually, I bet you can apply some of those lessons where you are strong to areas of opportunity.
Okay, so let's recap a little bit. So the main thing is self-awareness. We're gonna if we want to be resilient, we need to be aware of we need to be aware of our strengths and our shortfalls. And then we also need to be aware of things that might be coming up, right? Uh,
Preparation, sure.
if
Yeah.
possible. And then we need to have kind of like a few plans so that it's easier to follow through on one of those plans rather than to just do the old programming, the mental, emotional programming, maybe from our childhood or whatever. And what else can we throw in there for a recap?
So a recap, I mean, one thing that I like to say as resilience is a skill that can be trained, but to train resilience, you need to be in a place to do it. So resilience is effective management of and eventual recovery from your stress. And therefore, stress management, first and foremost. And like you said, we cannot intervene on things we are unaware of. So, awareness is everything is a skill that we can be trained. That's the main takeaway from today. But awareness helps you determine courses of action for either the stressors in your environment that you do not have control over, other than your response, which is your stress, managing that in whatever way is most effective, recovering from that, and then the preparatory training for life in general across domains is intentionally causing the stress response with prepared strategies that you like to use in the environments that typically cause the most stress, whether that be work or you name it. But taking those strategies that you've learned about that might be effective for you in response to uncontrollable life stress and then causing it yourself on purpose, deliberate discomfort at a manageable level with modifications, with perceived exertion considerations. Anyone can do this at any age. It is never too late, and you can always intervene and make things better because plasticity is possible for everybody. So intentionally causing that stress response, managing it and recovering from it, just like stress management, you are
Yep.
causing plasticity. You are training the skill that is resilience that can then translate to the inevitable hardships that are coming your way at a mild level daily, and unfortunately, at some point, and on a much larger scale for the circumstances that we all deal with throughout life in loss, perceived threats,
Yep.
internal conflict, burnout, you name it. We're going to go through hard times. Why would we not prepare for it?
For sure. And that's why I really appreciate the challenge you've got right now this month with with the reverse burpee and the technical get up, because we have to prepare for who hasn't slipped on ice. If you live in Canada, for instance, you're going to be on the ground at some point or another,
Yep.
and you got to get back up.
Yep.
Um, so it's such a valuable skill to train for, because we just I don't know, if you ever watch Fail Army, you'll see hundreds of people step out their front door and just bang, they're on the ground.
Yeah. Absolutely. I've devastated
Yeah.
injury. often occur
Yeah,
too.
yeah, and that's the worst part is, so we see them fall down and we laugh, but the thing is, we don't realize that they either slammed the back of their head or their elbow or whatever. I have an elbow injury from falling down in 2019, and it's just kind of like a permanent twinge, in the one elbow. So, and that
Heck,
was slipping on ice.
yeah,
So, so yeah, we got to plan for things like that to happen because they, like you said, they're just gonna happen. Uh, and then, of course, we have the emotional things that are going to happen, whether it's, eventually we're going to lose loved ones, we're going to have um, unwanted events. And if we're not aware of how we're going to react ahead of time, and of course, you can't prepare for everything. We're not going to figure out all of our reactions ahead of time, but we got to do our best job, right?
absolutely. And the beauty of this too is fulfilling activities are often some amount of challenge that we overcome. And like you look back on some of the things that you're most proud of in your life, I bet it started off challenging and then you got through it, even if it was something fun that initially made you a little afraid. We Don't get me wrong, pleasurable activities are great. You should enjoy them. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you only lean into pleasure, you're limiting yourself and you're not going to experience it continuously. And then when inevitable hardship comes, it's going to be difficult. But what I love about intentional stress is you reframe what stress is. And
Yeah.
also, when you get that small win, if it's a daily challenge that's less than 5 minutes, you get a win that you're proud of. You cause confidence, let alone confidence in your ability. So as you get better at a skill, you're proud of yourself, and it encourages self-esteem. It encourages confidence on how else can I apply this to my life. There's
Yeah.
downstream positive effects. The 1% better daily mentality I love because you're not life is not linear. You can't just keep getting better physically, but there's always an area of opportunity that you can focus on to get a little bit better, a little bit more prepared, and also a little bit more confident in yourself. So these challenges are meant to be accessible for everybody, are meant to be manageable to get through. And the more you do them, the easier they get. Then you can make them a little bit harder. So you keep staying proud of yourself. It keeps being fulfilling. It's delayed gratification at its finest. It's something you don't really want to do at first, but once you do it, you're really thankful you did. I love the quote: easy now, hard later. Hard now, easy later. We should.
Hmm.
There's nothing wrong with enjoying yourself with pleasurable activities, but lean into that hard sometimes, and it makes the inevitable hard a lot easier.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Anybody watching tonight, I definitely encourage you to join a challenge like this, or to do something a little hard. Eh, There's a tendency for us to want to avoid things that are a little bit hard, but like you said, hard now, easy later.
Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely. Anything you want to add before we quit for the day?
I appreciate having me, brother. Easy to
Yeah.
talk. I really
Oh,
enjoyed this, and I think there's a lot of other things that we could talk about, like tinnitus, which
oh,
sometime
we definitely want to go over that one. Now that I know that you know stuff about it, we're definitely gonna have to talk about that. So,
for sure.
but yeah, I think we should call it a day. And this has been a really good talk. Thanks for your knowledge. And I'll write this up. And anything you want in that write up, make sure you let me know, and we'll make sure it's in there.
Sounds great.
Okay.
And thanks to the
Have a great.
powerful Anna Callan for linking us up. I forgot like how I originally met you, but it was from over Christmas, right? She did like the Secret Santa, and she linked us up because of the overlapping
Oh, that's right too. Yeah.
content that we have. So that's how I met you. So thanks to her for that. Again, I enjoyed this conversation. I've always enjoyed like chatting with you on the side, but getting to
Yeah.
talk to you live, very much enjoyed it, brother. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. It was great.
Take care.
Have a Yeah. Have a great night.
You too.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.